Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And top of the morning to you. This is Newsline, live as always from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And this morning, on a day when history is or will be made. That, of course, is all down to our dear Prime Minister. But today is the day Ranil Wickremesinghe, Prime Minister and Minister of National Policy Planning and Economic Development, is set to turn up at the Presidential Commission of Inquiry into the issuance of bonds by the Central Bank at Housdorf. It's the first time a serving Prime Minister of Sri Lanka will be appearing before a judicial process, quasi-judicial as the case may be. And to discuss the potential questions this morning will be, or is, Mr. Rusiripala Tennakoon, all the way back from Australia, having cut short his trip by a day or so to be here to watch history being made. Very good morning to you, Mr. Rusiripala.
Good morning, Faraz.
Wonderful to have you here.
Thank you.
And I suppose your daughter doesn't mind that you come back a few days earlier.
There were concerns, but I love to come back.
Indeed.
Yes.
Indeed. You were getting bored out there, were you?
Yeah, a little. But
you were not all that bored, because you did agree to give some interviews, and you also attended a seminar there, because there's much interest amongst the diaspora community as to what's happening in their land of birth.
Certainly for us, it was very encouraging to note how the Sri Lankan community there were really interested in the subjects, the ongoing current subjects in this country, particularly the bond issue. And then I was more delighted to find how interested they were in your channel, you know, and they were following every day, day in, day out, what is being reported in the channel.
Listen up, web division. Well done to our team members in our web division who put this out. And please make sure that it's working. All the links are working, because as Mr. Rusiripala says, there is a lot of interest.
Definitely, definitely.
Now then, first of all, first things first. Why should the Attorney General, in person, question the Prime Minister, lead evidence? Why?
Well, it can be looked at in different ways for us.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be that there is very great importance for the Commission to bring the most important person as a witness, and then that he should be dealt with in the most important manner as regards the evidence is concerned. That is one way of looking at it. But the other way is, if it is for any reason of giving some undue prominence or sort of importance to the witness, I think it is bad in principle.
Well, Mr. Rusiripala, forgive me if I'm wrong, but in my layman's mind, when somebody enters the witness box, puts his hand up there, and takes the oath, I don't think that he is anyone other than the person standing there. It is not the Prime Minister who's there. It's Ranil Wickremesinghe, who was doing his job as the Minister in charge of the subject of the Central Bank.
In this instance, for us, it goes beyond. You rightly mentioned this, you know, that the calling of calling of Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe, I don't know, the whole country is looking at it. The Prime Minister is coming. I mean, everyone is equal before law. And equality before law is something that we must respect. So that should be shown by act, by deed, by what we do. So therefore, if there is anything that indicates that the equality of law has been compromised by anything, it looks bad. And the fact that, you know, Mr. Wickremesinghe is wearing two hats. One is he's the Prime Minister, no doubt. He's our Prime Minister.
Indeed.
But he's also the Minister in charge of the Central Bank. So his being called before the Commission as the Minister in charge of the Central Bank doesn't, I mean, for me,
it's the most relevant thing, surely.
I don't think there's anything unduly or somebody to be disturbed about.
Indeed.
The Minister of Finance was brought before the Commission.
Exactly.
He replied, he answered, And of course, he avoided certain answers. That's a different issue.
He said, I don't know.
But he came as a witness.
Yeah.
So there is nothing so sacrosanct about Mr. Wickramasinghe coming before the Bond Commission, because this is a commission of investigation and inquiry. So the commission has every right to summon, by virtue of the mandate that is given to the commission, by way of a gazette notification given by His Excellency the President. You know, they have every right to summon a person. And besides, according to the specific manner in which it is stipulated in the gazette notification by the President, it says very clearly, any public servant should come before the commission if summoned and give his evidence or whatever, you know, to support the ongoing commission. And besides, what is this commission for us? This is not against anybody. This is a commission to investigate into a scam.
Yes.
And the commission has to find out from all persons relevant in whatever way how they can give out a report or make a recommendation, having studied all facts behind. So this is a fact-finding investigative role that they are doing, and for that the Mr. Wickramasinghe's evidence is extremely important for a number of reasons. One, he is the minister in charge of the subject of the central bank, and he himself has made public statements. Firstly, the statement that he made in the parliament on the 17th of March, completely only about the bond scam. He said various things. And contrary to what he said or what he stated in that statement, witnesses from the government from very high places have come and given contrary positions. In other words, there have been contradictions. So the commission has to find out which is correct. Whether what has been told by the other witnesses is correct, or whether what Mr. Wickramasinghe stated in the parliament, on the house, on the floor of the house is correct. So only way to ascertain that is find out from him, the author himself. The third important reason for us is, as far as I can see, you know, the entire episode, this entire bond thing emanates from one thing, that is, the Prime Minister, or Mr. Wickramasinghe, as the Minister in charge of the subject of the central bank, appears to have given a directive which he admitted, which even the ones who received that directive admitted before the commission, to do away with certain practices in a very abnormal or rather unilateral manner, which has led to this 27th bond issue, March 29th bond issue, March 31st bond issue.
Indeed.
Therefore, it is extremely important for the country to know. Respectfully, I want to mention Delivera's, the Attorney General's Department official, Delivera's statement one day in that commission. When he was asked about some publicity and the public and the media, he said, most certainly this is a public event and the public is interested to know.
Of course.
And this is done in the public interest.
Let nobody forget that it's the public's monies that are funding all these things.
I reiterating that position, I want to say that it is the duty of the commission to find out exactly what made the minister in charge of the subject of the central bank to give this directive, which was not in keeping with the practice that prevailed in the central bank.
And that practice, in case anybody forgets, has been in place without change since 1997. It was changed in February 2015. Obviously, Mr. Rusripala, on that directive.
Definitely.
And there is the whole essence of the problem, because the minister may well, there's no may well, he did say, because he said so. And Arjun Mayandan says that yes, the Prime Minister, he did only what he was told by the Prime Minister. However, both of them, either by design or omission, have forgotten that they don't make the law. They are not the law. The law is the Monetary Law Act. and the monetary board must have decided on that. They didn't do it. Mr. Rusipala, this whole blessed case and several others is because they have, by design, departed from established process and procedure. That is the problem.
I hope and pray that the Commission will definitely go into this issue. What made Mr. Wickramasinghe as the minister in charge of the subject to give this directive to the newly appointed governor of the central bank, and how he expected the governor to implement that directive is a matter that has to be explained fully, because it is only the monetary board, according to the law of this country, according to the governing regulations of the central bank, it is only the monetary board that can adopt a change to an existing system or introduce a new thing. Therefore, Mr. Wickramasinghe as the minister is duty bound to explain why he gave that directive and how he wanted that directive implemented in the central bank, whether it is by going through the normal process by getting a subsequent approval or formal approval at the monetary board, or without that. I mean, this is a matter that has to be explained. But the unfortunate thing is, the strange thing is, the monetary board of this central bank never ever endorsed or approved that directive at any stage. And worst situation is, the minister in charge of the subject gave a directive that this is how it should be done. The newly appointed governor of the central bank, at a meeting of the monetary board, subsequently decided that that system cannot be implemented. They reverted back to the system that prevailed earlier. Mr. Wickramasinghe has to explain how he feels about that change. And when he was so firm and positive, and he was of the conviction that opinion that it must be done. When it was not done, I don't know whether he questioned the new governor.
And it would be appropriate also to ask whether this was a decision he came to on a solo basis, or was he advised, and by whom, if so, was he advised to change the system that had been in place since 1997? For heaven's sake, that's the bottom line here. Now then, Mr. Rusipala, we see the world going all sorts of ways. We see that the people of Zimbabwe, they're already celebrating. They're on the streets and they're dancing and they're so happy merely because they know that their president of so many years, Robert Mugabe, is on his way out. And ahead of that being out, their party, ZANU, have actually evicted him. They have sacked him from the party.
Yeah.
Now then, just in the same vein as President J.R. Jayawardena appointed Ranasinghe Premadasa as the leader of the UNP, and just how Chandrika made way for Mahinda, and Mahinda made way for Maithripala Sirisena, it is time that, do you agree, is it time that Ranil Wickramasinghe steps down as leader of the United National Party, and if he doesn't step down, just in the way that Mr. Mugabe was refusing to do, isn't it time that the United National Party sacks him?
I think, Faraz, this is a question. What you are telling is, you are just giving air to what the majority of the people feel in this country. I don't think it is your statement or your opinion, because I have had the cross-sectional, an opportunity of even seeing or meeting some of the Sri Lankan community people living elsewhere.
Yeah.
They all say this combination for this new set of new government, under a new concept, and then with these Yahapalana theories, should continue, but Mr. Wickramasinghe's role as the Prime Minister appears to be they think that it is a hindrance to that process. So, and they feel all, like in Mugabe's case. Now, Mugabe's problem was he was trying to pass on the right to his wife.
Indeed.
I mean, these things, when they come to play, they become bad. Now, take this example. In this particular instance, Arjuna Mahendran was his choice.
Yes.
When Arjuna Mahendran was found fault with by the COPE committees, by his own investigative committee, by saying various things that this matter has to be investigated, something unusual has happened, that was the time Mr. Wickramasinghe should have taken a decision.
That was his opportunity to shine.
Definitely.
To show that he is Mr. Clean.
Exactly.
Or he was, so on. I'm going to read out for you, just ahead of this break, I'm going to read out for you a message received by me just now. I am 110% sure nothing going to happen today, as Hon PM will not allow to ask any questions by AG. It will be just 5 to 10 minutes inquiry and he will go as clean man, unless he steps down as PM and faces inquiry. Now this is a member of the public, and this is the sentiment that is being expressed.
This is a widely expressed sentiment, and this is what people widely believe. But one thing must be remembered for us, whether Mr. Wickramasinghe, as the minister in charge of the subject of the central bank, wearing the hat of the prime minister, will use, some kind of, as he says, as this viewer has stated, some avoidance of answering the questions.
Yeah.
I don't think it is material or relevant to that extent, because already the evidence is before the commission. The fact that he gave a directive, the fact that he appointed this person, the fact that he did not take necessary or appropriate action at any time during the course of these events. He never even cared to take a decision, at least to send this person on compulsory leave. A person in a very high post in the country, a public employee, faced with so many allegations from the highest place in the country, the legislature, parliament, a committee's meeting, and this man continues in his position in the chair without a day being removed or he being asked to step down. And who else is having the responsibility to answer that question for us? The minister in charge of the subject. He has grossly derelicted this duty, and he has created a very bad precedent among the public servants in this country, public service, by not taking action. By at least sending a person on compulsory leave is not if there is a prima facie, that's the least that one can take. That doesn't cause any problem or any harm to somebody. I mean, Mugabe trying to give power to his wife through the love, and somebody else is trying to prevent someone because of the love or relationship or something. I mean, these are matters, they look bad in the public eye.
They go beyond governance, don't they? On that note, we'll go in for a short break. Don't go away. After all, this is Newsline.
Shaukat Ali.
And welcome back to Newsline, where we're joined by Mr. Rusripala Tenakul. Now then, Mr. Rusripala, telephone calls. What's wrong with people making telephone calls to each other?
For us, the most intriguing revelation is this telephone call business.
Yeah.
I must say, there is a misunderstanding by some people, or they are trying to make the people or misdirect the people by saying that this amounts to some kind of telephone tapping or something like that.
Well, yes, Mahinda Rajapaksa joined the bandwagon by saying that.
My God, it's totally incorrect to state that.
Yeah.
It's in a murder case.
Yeah.
I mean, to track the culprits, they go into all kinds of evidence that is available. And in this case, the evidence that is available is there. Nobody has created those evidence. That is what people have done who were involved in this affair.
Yeah.
And they are depicted very clearly in the telephone conversations they have had, at various levels. The finance minister, his family, has had a number of calls.
707 calls.
I don't know the number. I was not privy to those information. I was out.
387 to the minister to and fro, and 320 to and fro with the missus.
And then the worst scenario is the COPE committee. You know, it is the belief of the parliament and of the country that the members sitting as members of a COPE committee in the parliament, I mean, it tantamounts to some judiciary, some quasi-judiciary function. They are answerable to the whole country through the parliament by submitting a report. And such people investigating into that matter, while the investigations were on and when the inquiry was going on, they seem to have been in constant contact with this
It's
person.
all too cozy, isn't it? That's the problem here. It's not the 227 calls that Sir Sujiva Senasinghe made between him and Aloysius and the other way around. It is the fact that 63 were made during the COPE sessions, when they were supposed to be conducting an impartial and independent inquiry.
What they fail to understand is, it is not the question that having a telephone call that matters or concerns the public. What matters is their behavior in the COPE committee in relation to this investigation and how they were how they were frantically trying at different times. They even appointed the chairman, no? Acting chairman to the COPE when the chairman walked out.
That's right.
And it is this group, no?
That's right.
The same people who have been having telephone calls, constantly in touch, they elected the chairman, and the parliamentary secretary general had to clarify that there is no such procedure. You can't appoint anybody as the chairman into that committee in the absence of the chairman proper.
Yes.
The Handunnetti, the proper chairman of the COPE, walked out.
Yes.
Walked out. He was made to walk out. People have forgotten this.
Yes.
And when we weave these telephone calls in that context for us,
Yeah.
the entire thing becomes crystal clear. What they were up to, what they have been sort of, what somebody would have induced them to do, apparently, all these things become very clear. So therefore, the question of telephone calls have to be studied and taken up in that context, not in isolation. How did these gentlemen behave in the COPE committee? You know, we have said no. I mean, there are publications where they say, they even went to the extent of saying, shall we say that instead of putting Arjuna Mahendran, the governor of the central bank, they were these very people who are now being the subject of allegation against these telephone calls.
Yeah.
Some of them, this Appuhami,
Yes.
Honorable Appuhami, he said,
There's no honor there.
I don't know, I mean, he's still an MP.
Yeah.
So he said, shall we drop the name Arjuna Mahendran and say central bank governor? I mean, he would have, I don't know whether he got a telephone call making that request for him to state that in the COPE committee.
But Mr. Rusipala, when we examine the fundamental principles of democracy and of Westminster-style politics, of which Ranil Wickremesinghe is no greater exponent than anyone else in this country, right? Then it is clear. The bells have tolled for Ranil Wickremesinghe. Either he must resign or he must be sacked from the United National Party. It is the damage he has done to the party is way beyond any other tragedy that may and may not have happened in the past to the UNP. It is a very serious matter that this man, who is supposedly a paragon of democratic virtues and values, is today ignoring everything, virtually sticking a finger up at the people and continuing to hold office when he knows that as the minister in charge of the subject of the central bank and as the person who made that request to change the system that the Auditor General says is not the least cost system, he must resign or be sacked. It's happening all over the world. Let's not forget Robert Mugabe. It's happening all over the world.
It is, and that is, as you rightly said, the Westminster type of democracy that is prevailing in the civilized world. Don't forget, Faraz, UNP is a party with a strong voter base in this country. You see, they have so many voters, so many 52 million nearly people at one time. 5.2 million people at one time who are dedicated party members of this party.
But he's let them all down,
Now,
Mr. Sripala.
what we must understand is, should Mr. Wickramasinghe take all these people for a ride, or should they listen to the opinion and give the party to carry on, by paving the way for others there are definitely people in the United National Party who are capable of leading this party. The unfortunate situation is they haven't been given a try. They have not been given a chance. But the country now demands, I think the voters, their party voters, are certainly demanding that the party should be led by clean, pure people, and at the same time, this unity must be maintained. The unity that was created on the 8th of January 2015, the desire of the people is to see that it continues, not under any circumstances with anybody, but with selected people who can continue this state of affairs and deliver what the people really wanted through that change. So Mr. Wickramasinghe apparently is a very big impediment to that state of affairs.
And therefore?
He has to. It is high time that he steps
to
down.
what?
He should step down. Still he can lead the party. Still.
Yes.
Still he can lead the party.
Yes.
There are leaders, party leaders who don't have
Well,
to
after all, he was happy to support this so-called, the common candidate concept.
Exactly.
And so he can do that.
Exactly.
He can have a common candidate as the Prime Minister.
Exactly.
He can continue to lead his party until they are fed up of him.
It was a very correct move. The survival of the party due to a lack of a proper leader to face elections at that time, was manipulated in such a manner by selecting a very suitable person.
The people, yes, sorry.
Yeah, by selecting that person, and that saved the party, that saved Mr. Wickramasinghe's face.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't know if he had to face an election in that situation, where the party would be today. Therefore, the concept of some UNPers saying that it is the UNP that brought the president, I look at it in a different way. I think the president saved the UNP.
And he also saved them when he dissolved Parliament after that first
August.
They say that after his victory in Colombo, Ranil Wickramasinghe is supposed to have said that the people of Colombo love him. I have a slightly different take. It is not that the people loved him, it is that the people loved the United National Party, and therefore the votes. Now, the people of the United National Party appear to have been let down, like, I dare say, a large number of the public who are absolutely now convinced that Mr. Wickramasinghe cannot lead. He must go.
This getting the number of votes for us is it's purely the system. The system was that when the leader of the party contests in a certain district, all those party people under that system, that Manapa system,
yes,
preference vote system, they invariably cast one vote to the leader.
Indeed.
So therefore there is no magic. Now you see, we had in this parliament people who polled only 2,000 votes in the Colombo district.
Yeah.
When they went to Gampa district, they got over 150,000 votes. People, I don't want to name the people who would have otherwise not received any number of votes. That depends on how you project yourself in that list system under the Manapa system. So that is not a personal affiliation or attraction to the people.
Just before we finish, and I think I've got a minute here, very quickly, a columnist, DBS, has written a column in which he says that the President has asked Mr. Wickramasinghe to resign ahead of his going to the Bond Commission. Now, ordinarily, DBS doesn't write Tosh, right? And so there is a school of thought to say that it is, considering the fact that it damages democracy and people's perception of democracy so much when a serving prime minister has to go and help with the great, what has been described as the greatest financial scam ever to afflict this country, right? Then perhaps there was some truth in that.
I think internationally, if that happened, if we step down before going before the commission, I do not know whether there was a directive or a request or to that extent.
Yeah.
If there was, it was very good. It should have happened that way. But that is the best thing that should have happened to the image of this country, the democracy, and what we are propagating or trying to create in the international scenario.
No, I don't want anyone to get this wrong. Cut my hand, you'll find it green. That's where the loyalties are,
yes,
and have been for all these years. But as somebody who supports the vision of this UNP, this free market theories and so on of the UNP, there is absolutely no way that I personally would want him to lead our party. That's the bottom line here. It's nothing to, it's not personal. It's absolutely not personal. It's the party and ultimately the country.
It is the majority view, I believe.
Rusipala Tenakul, many thanks for being on Newsline. I wish you a pleasant picnic in Hausdorff today. And that's about it from Newsline on Monday, the 20th of November, 2017. Take care. God bless.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.